When the grid finally goes down, your drywall and concrete house will become a freezing tomb. Most modern preppers think off-grid means buying a prefabricated shed or hoarding expensive solar panels, but those fragile systems rely on supply chains that will inevitably snap. Therefore, if you want to outlast the coming storm, you must learn the brutal, ancient geometry of the forest. Today, I am going to show you exactly how to build an impenetrable off-grid log cabin from absolute scratch. Zero power tools, zero hardware stores, just raw timber, primitive physics, and the iron will to survive. You need to internalize this knowledge now, because when the winter hits, the forest will not give you a second chance. Phase 1. The stone foundation. We begin with the absolute foundation of survival, isolation from the earth. Modern builders pour concrete slabs to stop moisture, but in the deep wild, you cannot mix cement. If you place your timber directly on the dirt, the ground moisture will rot your cabin from the bottom up in less than 2 years. Therefore, we rely on the grandfather rule of the forest, the stone pillar foundation. How it works. You must scout the terrain for large, flat, high-density rocks. You dig below the frost line and stack these stones to create elevated pillars at your 4 corners. Scenario: you have hiked 10 miles into the deep timber. The ground is saturated from autumn rains. You do not panic. You spend your first 2 days doing nothing but hunting for flat granite. You haul them to your site, leveling them perfectly using nothing but a clear tube of water. You have just separated your future home from the rotting mud. Your foundation is now as permanent as the mountain itself. You have secured your base, but a foundation is useless without walls, and to get walls, you must engage in the most dangerous, energy-draining task in the wilderness. Phase 2. The harvest and the peel. You need timber. Most beginners think felling a tree is just swinging an axe until it drops. But a falling 2,000-pound pine tree is a massive kinetic weapon. One wrong cut and it will kick back and crush you instantly. Therefore, you must master the directional hinge cut. How it works. You cut a precise 45-degree wedge facing your exact drop zone. Then, you make a straight felling cut from the back, leaving a 2-inch hinge of uncut wood. This hinge physically steers the massive tree safely to the earth. Once it is down, the clock starts ticking. Bark traps moisture and breeds wood-boring insects. But if you use a draw knife to peel the log while the sap is still running, the bark strips away like wet paper. Therefore, you must peel every single log the moment it hits the ground. Scenario: your muscles are burning. You have dropped 20 massive pines. Your hands are covered in sticky black sap. You straddle the fallen timber, pulling the sharp draw knife toward you in long, rhythmic strokes. The bright yellow wood beneath is exposed to the wind to cure. You are not just cutting wood. You are processing armor.
Phase 3. The saddle notch. You have the timber. Now you must build the walls. Modern construction relies on thousands of steel nails, but nails rust and they snap under the immense shifting weight of a settling cabin. Therefore, we completely eliminate the need for hardware by using the ancient saddle notch. How it works. Wood naturally expands and contracts with the freezing and thawing of the seasons. By carving a precise curved saddle into the bottom of the top log, it physically cups the log beneath it. As the massive logs dry over the years, they shrink, but because of the curved geometry, gravity forces them to lock tighter together over time. The walls are now chest high. The logs weigh 300 pounds each. You set up a primitive ramp using 2 inclined poles. Using a paracord parbuckle system, you easily roll the massive log up the wall by yourself. You scribe the exact shape of the bottom log onto the top one, roll it over, and chop out the saddle. When you roll it back, it drops into place with a solid, echoing thud.
The structure is becoming immovable. Phase 4. The Ridgepole Shield. When the winter storms arrive, heavy snow loads can collapse a flat roof, burying you alive while you sleep. You cannot rely on flimsy plywood. You need the Ridgepole and purlin system. How it works: instead of building a complex truss system, you stack the gable ends of your cabin higher and higher into a triangle. At the very peak, you lay the thickest, heaviest log you have, the ridgepole. But you don't stop there. Therefore, you lay parallel logs called purlins running down the slope. This creates an immensely strong, gravity-fed skeleton that can hold thousands of pounds of dead-weight snow. The temperature is dropping rapidly. The first flakes of winter snow are falling. You hoist the massive ridgepole into place, locking it into the final notch. You lay your heavy wooden roof planks over the purlins, securing them with wooden pegs. The snow begins to pile up, but the steep 45-degree pitch simply sheds the weight off the sides. You have defeated the sky. Phase 5. The Chinking Seal. The walls are up, the roof is on, but raw logs are never perfectly straight. They're gaps, and in a sub-zero blizzard, a gap the size of a coin will drain the heat from your fire in minutes. Therefore, you must master the lost art of chinking. How it works: you cannot buy synthetic foam spray. Instead, you harvest nature's insulation. You mix dense river clay, wood ash from your fire, and dried sphagnum moss. The moss acts as a fibrous binder, exactly like rebar and concrete. You pack this dense, hardening compound deeply into every single crack. When it dries, it turns to stone, creating a hermetic, wind-proof seal. The unbreakable recap: the stone foundation, the directional felling, the saddle notch, the ridgepole, the chinking seal. This is not a weekend camping project. This is the calculated application of primitive engineering. Modern society makes us entirely dependent on the grid to keep us warm and safe, but the wilderness does not forgive weakness. True survival is about building an infrastructure that cannot be switched off by a power grid failure. If you had to disappear into the woods tomorrow, could you build this? Let me know down in the comments den.